business and you have a lot of freedom when you start your own business. I still work in a very dynamic world. What I know to be the truth now, and which is very effective, is actually confidence and authenticity.
Charlotte Tilbury для ідеальної шкіри.
When we're confident, people treat us differently. We treat ourselves differently. And when we're authentic, who we really are. I'm a woman. I am female. And it's okay to be a female. We don't have to dial down our femininity. We can be as feminine as we want to be. And that works for us. That's authentic to us. Now, I'm not talking about going OTT, unless that's who you authentically are. To make it in any world, male or female, confidence and authenticity are the keys.
Yes. And it's so...
Чудова підготовка шкіри до макіяжу. Вирівнює тон, дуже добре зволожує. Містить силікони, до речі, тому на ніч використовувати не можна.
So let's kind of
just slow it all down, because the perception then is actually we're in control, even if we're not underneath it. We look more like we are. And there's that saying, fake it till you make it, which I don't always believe in. But sometimes when we just slow ourselves down, we actually start to feel more confident and in control of ourselves too. So that's number one. Number two is own your space. A lot of women don't own their own space. We try and make ourselves smaller and, fitting in. But actually own your space. And I mean by that, own your own body language space. It's okay to gesture. It's okay to use your hands if that's what you authentically do. If you've got office space, use that space. Don't try and put yourself into a tiny little box. Use the space you've got around you. When you're travelling on aeroplanes, on trains, own your space. Oftentimes as women, we're very polite and we move ourselves over to get out of the way of the next person. But it's okay to just actually sit in your space and own your space. We look more confident, we feel more confident because we're allowing ourselves to be who we really are. And my third tip is get really good at eye contact. Now, lots of people, not just women, are not good at eye contact. And the more you don't like yourself, the worse you will be at eye contact. So I always say to my clients, if I'm doing any training with them, get comfortable with just looking at yourself. So even if it's just for 5 seconds in a mirror in the morning, not while you're cleaning your teeth or brushing your hair or putting your makeup on. I mean, really look at yourself in the mirror. And not with a view to judging yourself, with a view to, okay, this is me today. And then what you gradually allow yourself to do is, I like my eyes, okay. Because this here, the internal talk we do to ourselves, affects out here. So, and build it up. Might take weeks, might take months. Some of my clients have, 6 months later said, right, I'm at a minute and a half. That is fine. But what they notice is when they get really good at giving eye contact, is they notice that people respond to them differently. And it's a really great relationship builder. Did you know, Mary Jean, that you can build a relationship and get someone to fall in love with you if you talk to them and look at them with deep eye contact for about 3 to 4 minutes, I think the science says, the research says. So that tells us how important eye contact is.
That's amazing. I have to think about that because maybe having that eye contact is not just for romance, but also for business as well.
Absolutely.
Because now they really like me. They really think I have something to give. I think that's great. So have we spent a little time talking about the digital world? And you're like the face whisperer, so you know about facial expressions. And then when we're in the digital world, that's basically what people are seeing. Maybe a little bit of the shoulders, maybe a little of the hands, but just the face. Could you give some tips on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So a smile is a big thing. Smile as soon as you come onto a Teams or a Zoom meeting or a video call. Make the first thing you do is smile. And I always say to people as well, when you go onto calls, always get on a couple of minutes early if you can, and leave that time to have that chit chat that you would normally do when you walk into an office or you meet somebody for a meeting. You always have a couple of minutes for chit chat while the coats come off or while you get yourself settled. Do the same on your video calls too. If you can, you'll notice that today during our talk, you'll see my hands at various points on my face, on my chin, or, you'll see them. We trust people more when we see their hands. That's a fact. It's been scientifically proven. So if you can on the calls, just make sure your hands are visible at certain points. You don't have to be jazz hands like this the whole time, but just every now and then, put your hands in, because we trust people more. So you start Chin level, when you're on a video call, so many times, and I even see it on the news when someone's being interviewed and they're not in the studio, you see them either looking down or looking up, and that's just terrible. You know, confidence is what we want. Chin level is confidence. When we're looking down on someone, we could be metaphorically looking down on them. When we're looking down, we also look less confident. So we don't want to look chin up. I don't wear my glasses on the screen because they're bifocals, and I end up looking down the bottom. I don't want to look arrogant or overconfident. Chin level is where it's at.
Yeah, and that's sometimes difficult for me even to do because I tend to come down and look down, and yeah, that's not the best. And I get reminded that from my tech guy. So thanks for that. Now let's move into maybe a couple of tips if we're in a meeting, because a lot of times an in-person meeting, a lot of times we are now having to come back into the office, and we've been after maybe a year or two, we've been sitting in our yoga pants and only being dressed up from the waist up. So now we have to come back into the office and make ourselves, especially women, make ourselves feel that we are part of the group, that we have something to contribute. So what tips can you give on that type of thing?
And I would say be intentional about how you turn up and with your body language. You know, when I go to meetings, depending on what sector of industry that I'm going to, I will dress to fit in with them. So when I go to a financial institute, I'm very smart because they are all suited and booted still here in the UK anyway. When I go to a marketing or an advertising industry sector, I'm a bit more casual, but still smart casual. But it's about being intentional. You know, if you go to work in your very casual clothes and you're not what's the word, dressed for the day, as I like to say it. If you're not dressed for the day, sometimes people perceive you as very casual, and you may act more casual. So even when I'm working at home in my desk, you know, I can wear anything. I dress for the day because I'm being intentional. When I go to the office, I'm even more intentional because I'm there. People are reading things about me, about my body language, about my behaviour, how I'm feeling, how I've turned up, how I'm dressed. So for me, it's about being intentional when we go back to the office. And have those conversations, you know, greet people with a smile, make sure it's genuine, you're pleased to see them. Have those little conversations, don't make it all about work, because we build relationships with people that we know.
Let's take a look at how we can understand body language and emotions, and how that can help us build that strong personal brand. You kind of talked a little bit about it, you know, having the right dress for the right time, dressing for the day, and I always do too when I'm on Zoom. I want to be on Zoom like I'm professional. But if you can give us some examples of that too.
Yeah, it's about becoming self-aware. I mean, how aware are the ladies that are watching this? How aware are you of your own body language? I always say to people, either film yourself, and if you don't want to do that, you feel too uncomfortable to do that, ask a trusted friend or a trusted colleague, someone you trust, their opinion, not someone who's unkind, but not someone who's also overly kind. How do I come across? What are my behaviours? Do I have a habit that I do all the time? You know, it might be someone that fiddles with something and they don't even realise they're fiddling. And it could be for a very good reason they're fiddling, but people often perceive that as nervousness. So what do you do? What is your behaviour? Be conscious of the messages you're sending. You know, I like to fiddle. Now, if I'm on Zoom or I'm in a meeting, I will often have a pen in my hand and I'll take notes. If I'm in a meeting and it's in person, I'll often take notes, but making sure I keep good eye contact too. I'll make those notes because it stops me fiddling with anything else. You know, when you're presenting, how do you present yourself? Are you stood on, you know, one leg crossed over another leg? That gives you an unstable base. Put your feet firmly on the ground, about the width of your hips, firmly on the ground. You give yourself a strong, firm foundation. It's these little tips that just make those differences. But I would say become very self-aware. You know, I say to people sometimes, film yourself when you're sat at your desk at your office. Just put your Zoom on and just film yourself, or the Teams, whichever way you prefer. And just film what you do. You'll
until you know what you do, you can't tweak that behaviour to make sure it's optimised.
And I think also is understanding understanding the circumstances of what's going on. I know when I first started doing a lot of training in the company I worked for, was in the training, learning and development area. My very first endeavor was, watching, kind of like participating, but more observing of what was going on. And there was one person in the audience that just was like this the whole time. And I was thinking, wow, he is really not happy with what's going on. And I started really going, wow, he looks almost angry. And then after the presentation, he came up to the presenter and said, thank you, that was really interesting. And so sometimes we do project our own thoughts of what someone else's body language is. So I think, bringing it into context.
Change their whole relationship, because now they have permission to say to her, Claire, are you cross? Or Claire, are you thinking? Because she was, most of the time, just thinking about how she could use the information the team were presenting to her. But her sister had told her this, but she just thought it was her sister being funny. So this because when we do these behaviours, like you just said, people perceive it as one thing. It could be nothing to do with that. So if there is something going on for you, say it. When I go to present in front of an audience, I always road test the clothes I wear before I present to make sure that they're not uncomfortable and that I feel fully comfortable and fully confident wearing them. Because if I'm not, I won't come across how I want to be perceived either.
So if there's one thing you'd love every woman who's listening to this to remember about body language, what would that be?
Your body language is your silent advocate. Before you even say a word, your body language has spoken for you and about you. People call it a soft skill. It's actually a vital skill to master it, and it's easily mastered. You start with that step of self-awareness and then tweaking and understanding what true confidence looks like, getting to like yourself. So important. The photographs you use for your personal brand in business, whether they're on the website about the team or your LinkedIn profile. Are you smiling? Happy to be there? I see so many professional women who are very serious, looking at the camera very seriously. But there's no warmth there, and actually confidence, true confidence, is a warm and approachable emotion, feeling. So, let that warmth come through. Start to be happy with who you really are. And if there's things that you don't want, change them. Work to change them. Might be small steps, but go in the direction that you want to go.
And is there, just quickly, a favorite tip or technique you would like them to start using?
Look out for the one-sided shoulder shrug. The one-sided shoulder shrug, either for yourself or for someone else, tells you everything. When you say something and that shoulder goes, just one side, not both sides, when that shoulder goes, you know you have no confidence in what you've just said, but that's probably not going to happen. Or if somebody else does it, they have no confidence. So watch out for those one-sided shoulder shrugs.
Great, insightful, and I really appreciate you being here, and I am so happy that we connected.
Thank you, Mary Jane. Jean. You don't like yourself, how can you expect anybody else to like you? What's going on in here reflects out here, and we can't stop it.
Are there any signs that somebody is internally having a hard time?
People talk about emotional intelligence all the time, but if you don't know what emotions look like on the face and the body language, you're not truly emotionally intelligent. We trust people more when we see their hands.
Okay, I love that. I didn't know that's a great tip.
When you've got a tough message to deliver, or there's any tension going on, sitting opposite. There's a couple of things here.
Hi and welcome to Rise with Roxy. Wherever you're joining us from today, I hope you're ready to uncover a secret superpower that could transform the way you communicate and the way that you feel. Today, we're talking about body language, the silent signals that shape how the world sees us, how we see others, and how we see ourselves. I'm so excited to be joined by author and body language expert Adrienne Carter. Known as the Face Whisperer, she's helped countless people decode the mysteries of non-verbal communication through her best-selling books and expertise. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to hit the follow button. Adrienne, thank you so much for joining. I've been so excited to have you on. And what a title, The Face Whisperer. That is so strong. I love it.
Thank Thank you for inviting me.
So we hear lots of different stats about how important non-verbal cues are, and I guess my first question is really to understand how much are we really giving away without?
They might not give us much away, but what they will be doing is giving away stuff with their face. And if they're really conscious of their facial expressions, then they'll probably leak information from the body language, because it's really hard actually to control everything. So the top poker players in the world, they are the best at hiding how they really feel, but most of us aren't top poker players.
So, when we think about, let's say, first impressions, so, we're meeting people all the time, whether it's last time, first impressions really matter. And how much of first impressions is about body language, the way that we hold ourselves?
And when the scientists say that we judge someone within like half a second, like we've made our decision whether we like them, whether we trust them, whether we want to get to know them more. So we are making these super quick judgments, but we've got to remember that our first impressions are also, people perceive us in a way that's from their world, if that makes sense, their biases and how they view us. They have their own biases. So as much as we can control some things about our first impressions, there's lots we can't too.
So what can we control?
How we turn up, how I dressed today was important to me, how you've dressed today is important to you, how I've done my hair, whether I wear my glasses or don't wear my glasses. There's lots of things we can control, and it's one of the things I talk about a lot is how intentional are we with our body language? Because if we just turn up and we don't give any thought to how we're turning up, we can be sending completely the wrong message.
So let's start with confidence, because I think, most of us, we know that confidence is like a very attractive trait. I think it's something that helps other people trust you, feel more open to you. So how can somebody go into a situation and portray confidence?
I mean, confidence I actually think is one of the most important ways to show up. Because if we're nervous when we turn up, and it can be any situation, it can be work, it can be personal, it can be a date, it can be anything. If we turn up and we're really nervous, what does that say about us? That do we really want to be there? Do we really like the other person? Why are we uncertain? If I turned up on this podcast and I'm really nervous, do I actually even belong here? Because what that will do is give you a chance to breathe, and the slower we walk, the more confident we look. If we scurry in somewhere, it looks a bit frantic, it looks nervous or high energy that might not be appropriate. So slow walk.
Okay, so walking in, we're slow. Then how are we sitting down?
I always sit, and I've sat with my hands sort of together or loosely clasped on my lap if I'm sitting down, or if I'm at a table, then maybe on the table. We trust people more when we see their hands. So if possible, I always keep my hands visible. But if you just sat like this, it's a really nice way to just sit to hold them loosely, because it gives your hands something to do. Because if you are feeling a bit nervous, you might start fidgeting or doing something with your hands. But if you just sit, hold them loosely, it comes across more confident.
Okay, I love that. I didn't know that if people can see your hands, they trust you more. That's a great tip. Okay, so we know how to sit, we know how to walk in. Now, how about the way that we speak, our voice, a tone of voice, speed of voice?
If you are naturally high-pitched and you want to be perceived as more confident, I would just lower it slightly and slow down your pitch as well. Because if we talk really fast, which I do have a tendency to do, particularly about my topic, because I love it and I'm passionate about it, but if I just consciously slow myself down a bit and allow those pauses, allow people to process, we come across as more confident too.
When it comes to public speaking and performing, I always think that I'm too expressive with my hands and that I use my hands too much. Is there a limit?
It's where you use your hands rather than how much you use your hands.
Right.
So I will say